You'd think after nearly 4 decades of marriage, there'd be some grand unraveling. A dramatic slam of a door, maybe a shattered vase, at least a stormy, how dare you moment. But Clara's marriage ended over a cup of lukewarm Folgers. She remembers the morning down to the socks she was wearing, fuzzy grey ones with tiny penguins. Dennis had already toasted his bread, cut it into perfect triangles. He was always a little neurotic about symmetry, and was staring out the window like he was trying to read a message from the clouds. Then came the sentence, so calm, so beige in tone, it almost didn't register. "I don't think I love you anymore." Clara blinked. Twice. Slowly. She actually tilted her head and squinted at him, like maybe she'd misheard. Or like maybe it was one of his dumb, dry jokes again. He once told a waiter she was pregnant just to see how she'd react. She was 57 at the time, but this wasn't a joke, not even a bad one. She didn't cry, not yet. What she did was grab the sugar bowl, stir her coffee with a kind of focused precision, and ask, "So are you leaving now or after I finish my crossword?" Dennis didn't laugh either. The thing is, Clara thought they were okay. Not in love and wild like the movies okay. But at least we get along and share groceries okay. They still watched Jeopardy together every night, bickered over which thermostat setting was reasonable, and exchanged the kind of tired affection you collect after 38 years like pennies in a jar, small but plenty. And yet, apparently, Dennis had been quietly packing up emotionally for years. He had rented a condo across town, told the kids, booked a moving van. She found this out all in the same afternoon, like a poorly written soap opera. Only in this one, she wasn't the dramatic lead. She was the extra, surprised to be written off the show. 2 weeks later, he left with his recliner and favorite pasta strainer, took the remote, left the coffee pot. Typical. Clara always used to fantasize about quiet. You know, when the kids were little and screaming bloody murder over whose turn it was to lick the spoon, or when Dennis would leave ESPN blaring from sunrise to bedtime. She used to think, one day it'll be quiet around here, and I'll finally get some peace. Well, the silence came, and it was deafening. At first, she tried to enjoy it. She'd walk around the house in her robe until 11, leave dishes in the sink because no one was there to judge. She could play Dolly Parton at full volume, burn scented candles that Dennis always claimed made his allergies flare, and eat crackers in bed like a true rebel. But by the second week, the novelty wore off. The silence didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like being forgotten in the middle of her own life. No one needed her schedule. No one called just to ask if they'd seen their blue socks. The dishwasher wasn't full. The laundry basket looked like a solo cup. Even the dog, Rascal, seemed confused, pacing around as if someone else should be coming home. And so Clara did what lonely people do. She talked to her plants. Marvin the Monstera became her therapist. Jeanette the Jade was the nosy neighbor. There were days she found herself saying, "Well, Jeanette, looks like it's just us girls again," while microwaving soup. She missed noise, not just chatter, but presence, the sounds of life happening alongside hers, the clink of another spoon, the door shutting too hard, even the annoying way Dennis used to clear his throat before speaking. Funny how the things that once annoyed you become echoes you'd pay to hear again. Loneliness crept in like a slow draft under the door. Quietly at first, then all at once. She tried volunteering, went to a pottery class, even joined a group called Silver Sisters in Transition. They met at Panera and mostly talked about foot pain and vitamin D supplements. She liked them, but she still felt invisible. That's when Debbie, her friend since middle school and queen of too much lipstick, suggested online dating. "You need to get back out there, Clara. A new man will fix that slump in your posture," she joked, slapping her hand on Clara's knee. Clara didn't want a man. She wanted to feel like she mattered again, like someone saw her, heard her, missed her. She sighed, poured herself a glass of wine, and downloaded 3 dating apps. Clara didn't set out to join the modern dating world. In fact, she actively resisted it. For months after Dennis left, whenever someone even hinted at her getting back out there, she'd throw up her hands and say something like, "I don't want a man. I want my remote back and maybe some Thai food." It was her way of avoiding the bigger truth. She didn't know how to be alone, but she sure as hell didn't know how to be single either. Her friend Debbie, the same one who wears leopard print like a neutral and swears by collagen powder, was the one who finally pushed her over the edge. "It's not about finding Prince Charming," Debbie said one Tuesday afternoon over egg salad and gin. "It's about reminding yourself that you're still alive, still wanted, still a catch, honey, even if your knees make noises when you stand up." Clara rolled her eyes. But that night, after brushing her teeth and staring at herself in the mirror a little longer than usual, she sat down at her laptop, took a deep breath, and typed, "Online dating for people over 60. She was not prepared. The first site she landed on looked like it hadn't been updated since 2003 and felt like a bingo hall disguised as a website. The second asked for her ideal age range, and when she typed 60-70, it suggested 83-year-old Ed from Wisconsin, who was looking for a travel companion and someone to hold hands with at church. She closed the browser, but curiosity, like thirst in the desert, kept creeping back. Eventually, she downloaded an app, then 2. By the end of the week, she had profiles on 3 different platforms, each one asking her to define herself in a few short sentences. A few short sentences? How do you summarize decades of life in a blurb? She settled on something she thought struck the right balance. Curious, compassionate, fiercely independent, learning to laugh again, good with words, better with lasagna, not here to babysit or fix anyone's life. Her first profile picture was taken at her niece's wedding, a rare candid where she looked confident and just tipsy enough to be mysterious. Debbie insisted she needed a second one, so they staged a fake gardening photo in Clara's backyard, where she posed with a trowel and a tomato plant she hadn't watered in a week. Then came the matches. Her phone pinged, constantly. It was almost flattering, until she actually read the messages. One man named Gary opened with, "Hey, sexy grandma." Clara nearly choked on her tea. Sexy? Grandma? Those words did not belong in the same sentence unless you were trying to traumatize someone. Another suitor, Yoga Guy 55, insisted that age is just a number and invited her to a sensual healing session at his apartment. Clara double-checked the invite to make sure she hadn't wandered into the wrong genre of dating. Then there was Bob, who seemed promising at first. He liked jazz, wrote poetry, and said he lived alone with a cat named Satchmo. On their first video call, he recited one of his original works, which involved rhyming moist with choice. Clara never hung up so fast in her life. For a while, dating became a bizarre hobby. She'd open the apps like checking the weather. Swipe right if they had eyes that looked kind. Swipe left if they mentioned how young they felt more than once in their bio. She began to notice the patterns. So many men had photos from 20 years ago, if not older. She went on one coffee date with a man who looked nothing like his profile picture. When she mentioned the discrepancy, he smiled and said, "Well, I still feel 45. Clara blinked. "Well, I still feel like I can do a cartwheel. But I'm not going to try it on this patio, am I?" Then came the man she called the Pirate. His actual name was Steve, but he showed up wearing a black leather vest and a medallion and introduced himself with a dramatic "Ahoy, Clara." She honestly thought it was a bit, until he started talking about how the ocean called to him in his dreams. She spent the entire dinner waiting for Johnny Depp to jump out from behind a potted plant. He didn't. But in between all the madness, there were a few quiet surprises. There was a retired high school principal named Marvin who took her to a matinee movie and offered her raisinets from a secret pocket in his jacket. He was sweet, if a little obsessed with crossword puzzles. On their second date, he tried to kiss her during a Ken Burns documentary. She declined, politely. And then there was Earl, a widower with kind eyes and a voice like a Sunday morning DJ. He didn't ask for photos or make weird comments. He just listened, asked her about books, laughed at her sarcasm. For 3 weeks, they exchanged handwritten letters, actual letters in the mail. Clara hadn't felt that flutter in years. But when they finally met, there was no spark. She wanted there to be, but chemistry, she realized, doesn't listen to kindness alone. Clara began to understand that dating wasn't going to be about finding the one. It was about rediscovering herself in the process, learning what made her laugh again, what kind of company she truly enjoyed, what kind of silence felt good, and what kind felt like loneliness wearing a suit. She didn't expect to find love. Honestly, some days she didn't even want it, but she liked knowing she still could. She still had opinions, desires, boundaries, hope. And sometimes she even had fun. Like the time she spent a Sunday afternoon speed dating at the community center, where one man introduced himself by offering her a Werther's Original and asking if she liked ducks. She said yes. He brought her a rubber duck on their first and only coffee date. Clara kept the duck. Because in a strange way it symbolized this entire season of her life. Odd, unexpected, sometimes ridiculous, but full of small, sweet reminders that she was still here. Still Clara. Still becoming. Still braver than she gave herself credit for. Still ready, even when she wasn't. You know how people say love comes when you stop looking? Clara thought that was nonsense, a thing smug married folks say to their single friends to keep them from crying into a pint of mint chocolate chip. But maybe there was some truth to it. Because Jerry came along when Clara was burnt out, on dating, on hope, on people in general. She had just deleted her profile on 2 of the apps. She was done pretending to like hiking. Done decoding looking for fun as emotionally unavailable man-child. Done. And then she got one last message. Hi Clara, I like your smile. You look like the kind of woman who laughs during funerals. I run a llama rescue. Want to meet them? Now that got her attention. Jerry wasn't like the others. First of all, he didn't ask for bikini photos. He sent her a picture of a llama named Butterscotch wearing a Santa hat. That's how their first conversation began, with a farm animal in festive attire. He was in his early 70s, with wild silver hair, a beard that made him look like an off-duty wizard, and twinkling eyes that said, "I've seen some things and survived them all." He'd lost his wife 5 years earlier, and instead of joining a grief group, he started rescuing llamas. Llamas don't judge, he told her over lunch. They spit if they're annoyed, and then they move on. It's honest. Their first date was at a local diner, where Jerry ordered liver and onions, which should have been a red flag, but Clara found it oddly charming. They talked for 3 hours, about books, about regrets, about what it meant to grow old without the person you thought you'd grow old with. When he offered her a second date, he didn't say dinner or drinks. He said, "Want to help me brush a llama named Reba?" So she did. It was weird, but kind of wonderful. Clara never thought she'd find peace standing knee-deep in hay while a curious llama sniffed her elbow. But something about it, the quiet routine, the earthy smell of the barn, Jerry humming old country tunes while he scooped grain, felt grounding. Like maybe life didn't have to be shiny and exciting. Maybe it just had to be real. She started seeing him more. Sundays at the farm, Tuesdays for tea. He'd call her just to say he'd found a new soup recipe she had to try, or to tell her Reba was being moody again. For the first time in years, Clara felt chosen. Not needed, not tolerated, but chosen. And just as she was starting to picture what it might be like to share a life with someone again, to have a man's toothbrush in her bathroom, to fold someone else's socks on purpose, Jerry sat her down under the oak tree by the pasture and broke her heart. Gently. "I think I'm still married in my soul," he said quietly. "I love spending time with you, Clara, but I talk to my wife every night, and I'm not ready to stop." She didn't cry. Not then. She just nodded and patted Reba on the nose and drove home, windows down, letting the wind do what tears couldn't. But here's the thing. Clara didn't regret Jerry. Not for a second. He reminded her she was still capable of connection, of curiosity, of deep belly laughter and early morning butterflies. He didn't love her the way she needed, but he woke her up from a sleep she didn't even know she'd been in. And that, in its own bittersweet way, was a kind of gift. After Jerry, Clara took a break from dating. A real one this time. Not the "I'll delete the apps, but keep my profile just in case" break. A real unplugged, unbothered, undistracted pause. She needed to know who she was without a man in the picture. You see, Clara had always played a role in someone else's story. Dennis's wife, the kid's mom, PTA secretary, dinner maker, peacekeeper, holiday planner, the reliable one, the background music to everyone else's melody. But now, with the silence and the space and the unexpected emptiness, she started asking, what would it look like if I were the main character? She didn't have a clear answer, but she knew she wanted to try. So she did something completely out of character. She booked a solo trip to New Mexico. No agenda, no tour guide. Just her, a rental car, and the wide desert sky. She stayed in a tiny adobe casita with squeaky floors and a rooster that screamed at sunrise. She drank coffee on the porch wrapped in a blanket, listening to the wind roll over the mesas like a lullaby. She went to an artist's retreat and painted what was supposed to be a sunrise, but looked more like scrambled eggs. Still, she mailed it to her daughter with a note. "This is modern art. I expect praise." One night she sat at a bonfire circle with strangers, young and old, tattooed and barefoot, and told them her story. About Dennis, about Jerry, about the feeling of disappearing inside your own life and crawling your way back, inch by inch. Someone clapped. Another person cried. A young woman leaned over and said, "You're who I want to be when I grow up." Clara didn't know whether to laugh or hug her. So she did both. When she got back home, something in her had shifted. She changed the curtains, started writing, little essays, thoughts, scraps of memory. She submitted one to a retirement magazine and nearly fell off her chair when it got published. Divorced at 60, Why My Houseplants Are the Best Listeners. She even bought a toolbox, not for a man, for herself. Learned how to fix a leaky faucet. Assembled her own bookshelf, mounted a spice rack. Every screw was a small rebellion. And she stopped apologizing. For her laugh, for her thighs, for taking up space. Clara wasn't looking to be young again. That ship had sailed, and honestly, she wasn't sure she'd board it again if it docked. But she was learning how to be herself for the first time. Fully. Loudly. Authentically. One Tuesday, standing barefoot in her kitchen, painting her toenails fire engine red, she looked in the mirror and whispered, "Hey there, Clara, you're actually kind of awesome." And for once, she believed it. People love to offer advice when you get divorced, especially after 60. "Oh, this is your time now. You should go on a cruise. Try yoga. It'll center you." Clara heard it all. And while the intentions were sweet, she couldn't help but feel like most people had absolutely no idea what they were talking about. Divorce after a certain age is not some glamorous reinvention montage set to uplifting music. It's weird and messy and occasionally ridiculous. And most of what mattered. Nobody warned her about that stuff, like how your body still wants to be touched, but your mind is a little too cautious to let anyone get close. Clara had moments, lying in bed with the moonlight crawling across the ceiling, where her skin ached, not for sex, not necessarily, but for closeness. The casual, comforting kind. A warm hand on her knee during a boring movie, fingers brushing hers over a second cup of coffee. But after Dennis, and after Jerry, and after a few too many men who didn't really see her, she found herself hesitating, guarded, wanting connection, but fearing disappointment more. No one told her how lonely the grocery store would feel. Standing in the produce aisle, staring at a bag of 4 avocados and thinking, I can't eat all of these before they go brown. She used to shop with a purpose, shopping for Dennis, for the kids, for Sunday dinner. Now she found herself wandering, reading labels just to feel like she belonged in the rhythm of people doing normal things. And then there were the subtle exiles. Friends stopped inviting her to dinner parties. At first, she thought maybe it was just timing. But then she realized couples are weird about single people, like she was contagious, like her divorce might rub off on them. She wasn't bitter, just quietly stung. She noticed it everywhere. How society seemed to treat her like a soft shadow of a woman, no longer a wife, not quite a widow, just there. Like furniture in the corner. Nice, but not essential. And dating. Good heavens. No one warned her how often she'd be approached by men looking for a nurse with benefits. One man literally said, I'm looking for someone to help me manage my cholesterol and drive me to dialysis. Clara had laughed, actually laughed, and replied, Sweetheart, I'm not a caretaker, I'm a catch. But for every eye roll, there were lessons. For every tear on a Tuesday night, there was a quiet, unexpected joy, like dancing barefoot in the living room with an Aretha Franklin record, or fixing the back gate herself and feeling like a damn superhero, or laughing out loud at a sitcom and realizing she didn't miss anyone sitting next to her on the couch. Nobody tells you that the hardest part isn't being alone. It's realizing how much of yourself you gave away over the years without even noticing, and then figuring out how to take it back. But the good part? The really beautiful, secretly powerful part? You can take it back. One ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. These days, Clara lives in a sunlit little bungalow on the edge of town. It's nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 squeaky hallway, and a backyard full of rebellious wildflowers that refuse to stay in neat rows. But it's hers. Every curtain, every coffee mug, every piece of art on the walls has a story now. Not shared stories, not we bought this on our honeymoon, or the kids made this in 3rd grade kind of stories. Her stories. She wakes up slow, makes her coffee strong, wears her bathrobe until noon if she feels like it. There's no one to impress, and isn't that delicious? Clara now teaches a weekly writing class at the library called Rewriting Your Second Act. The first week, 5 women showed up. Now they have to bring in extra chairs. They come with journals and heartache and courage tucked under their arms. Divorced women, widows, some who've never even lived alone. Clara doesn't preach. She just shares and listens and reminds them that their stories aren't over. That maybe the most interesting chapters happen after the part where the husband walks out. She still dates, on her terms, no more projects, no more fixer-uppers. If someone can't match her energy or respect her solitude, she wishes them well and walks away. And if no one quite fits, that's okay too. She's not waiting to be rescued. She's building a life she doesn't need to escape from. And the best part? She's funny again. Not tell a joke funny, but sharp and sly and bold in a way she hasn't been since her 20s. She flirts with the guy at the bakery, tells the librarian she's working on a memoir called How to Divorce Your Husband and Still Keep the Good China. She says things out loud now, unfiltered things, and it feels damn good. She's not healed. Healing, she's learned, isn't a finish line, it's a rhythm. Some days, she misses Dennis, or Jerry, or her old self, the one who still believed marriage was forever. But more days than not, she looks in the mirror, gives herself a wink and thinks, look at you. You came back to life. If you ever find yourself in her town, you might see her at the Saturday farmers market, holding a bouquet of sunflowers in one hand and a cinnamon bun in the other. She'll be wearing sunglasses, probably laughing with someone who just asked her why she's glowing. And if you're brave enough to ask her what life is like after 60, after divorce, after heartbreak and starting over, she'll lean in, flash that sly smile of hers and say, hard, weird, beautiful, and just getting good. Then she'll walk away, hips swaying to a rhythm only she can hear. Now, if this story touched you, made you laugh, or reminded you that it's never too late to rediscover yourself, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw, and uplifting stories just like this. And if you know someone who needs a little hope, and maybe a llama, share this with them. Until next time, stay brave, stay curious, and keep becoming you.